The problem is that when you send paperwork as opposed to arresting someone, you're kind of telling them, listen, you're going to get away with it. It's just a massive failure on the state. That is really what has to be uncovered. Who were they protecting?
Sadiq Khan, who it feels like for the longest period had been denying that there was any kind of child grooming gangs in London.
Sadiq Khan's denial and Mark Riley enabled the abusers to continue. I actually was expecting Starmer to resign.
Will you hold your own party at that point to the same standards that we hold Labour to currently?
Well, look, of course accountability is absolutely necessary, and of course we'll be accountable.
The clip that Piers Morgan seemed to have put out, and it shows you storming off the show. So what happened?
I couldn't believe my ears. I actually have never heard something like that.
Do you feel like Piers Morgan lied to you? Hello and welcome to a very special Daily Expresso. I'm thrilled to welcome back onto the show Laila Cunningham, Reform UK's London mayoral candidate. Welcome back.
Thank you.
Good to have you. How you doing? How you been?
It's been good. It's been really, it's been good so far. I speak to Londoners almost every day because, I walk around and people just really want change, JJ. And if I can convince them that I've convinced some, hopefully I can convince enough that I can be that vehicle of change for them.
Yeah, fingers crossed. Fingers crossed. Now, look, I'm going to get straight into this Daily Express front page. So, from our investigation, it seems that Keir Starmer oversaw the use of paedophile ASBOs, that's our own quote, that let suspects off with warning. So, essentially what happened is, at the time when he was the top prosecutor at the CPS, he was drafting and agreeing with these notices that then police officers handed out. So some child sex rapists, instead of being fully investigated and then hopefully arrested and then go to the court and found guilty and put in jail, instead they were given notices that said, stop what you're doing, where this is a child that you're talking to. And then no further action was taken, so these people could continue to do their horrible things with impunity.
Yeah, I actually saw, Zach sent me his YouTube video as well, where he...
Zach Garner-Perkis, yes, great journalist.
Yeah, great journalist. I've met him a few times. And I think these are what he's referring to are child exploitation notices, where they warn groomers and people who are sexually exploiting children to stay away. And the problem is that when you send paperwork as opposed to arresting someone, you're kind of telling them, listen, you're going to get away with it. And you recognize that they've already committed a crime in trying to engage with a child, in trying to sexually exploit the child, and the police respond with paperwork, with a notice. I mean, ASBO's warning notices are there for minor inconveniences, nuisances, and they treated child sexual exploitation as that, and it basically told the abusers, you know what, you can get away with it. And it's just a massive failure on the state. And I know that they were used in the Met. And I don't know if you saw the video with Zach and Maggie Oliver, and there was another police officer there. And he said that junior officers were told by senior officers, literally he said that, were told to leave it alone. Why? Why were they told to leave it alone? Who are they protecting? Because they're not protecting the girls. Yeah. And I think that is really what has to be uncovered. Who were they protecting? And why were they protecting? Why did the senior police officers feel it is necessary to protect child sexual abusers? Yeah. Listen, and these warning notices are still, I think, in deployment.
Crikey. So you got Sadiq Khan, who it feels like for the longest period had been denying that there was any kind of child grooming gangs in London. Again, Zach Garner-Perkis led the investigation to this that suggests there are plenty of child grooming gangs in London. And Sadiq Khan, when he was asked about it, he'd always deny. What is it, do you think, that Khan doesn't want to investigate these things? Why was he in such denial about something? I find it impossible for anyone to think, no matter how naive you are, we've got child grooming gangs across the country, but in the biggest city in the country, no, it's not happening. Of course it's going to be happening in London.
Well, JJ, I don't know. In the video, I think Zach said that he discovered these warning notices that were issued to groomers and potentially rapists. He discovered them while he was researching grooming gangs in London. So basically, let's just go back, because when you Imagine the police. They know a child's being sexually exploited potentially, right? Or even contacted by an adult who has very malign intentions. And the police are like, you know what? We know something serious is happening. We think you're involved. And we're putting you on notice, and we're just going to give you a warning. It's not a deterrent. It's saying, you know what, we're going to look the other way. And listen, the whole point of criminal law, it crumbles if there are no consequences, if there's no deterrent.
Yeah.
And these girls relied on the police to protect them. You know, they relied on the state. And yeah, Sadiq Khan, for many times, he said they didn't exist in London.
Yeah.
And I read one of the survivors' reports from Oxford. She said she was bundled in a car and there are hundreds of men, and this was in 2016, hundreds of men in London. She was never asked about them and she couldn't understand why. And, you know, this was when he became mayor, so it would have landed on his desk. Another one said that she was, I think it was from the Midlands, she was bundled in the boot of a car, driven to London, gang raped overnight by multiple men who waited for her in a house because the abuser owed them.
Right.
So
paying off debts.
Pay off debts. And so it's definitely happening in London. And then you saw the report that came out last week by the BBC.
The BBC did their report 3 months after we had done our initial investigation.
100%.
Yeah.
But it really, you know, it somehow the public seemed to listen to the BBC more.
Yeah.
But it really drove home the point that they are very prevalent in London. And, you know, for me, Sadiq Khan's denial and Sir Mark Riley enabled the abusers to continue.
Yeah.
You know, because they're looking away, their denial of it existing actually enabled the abusers to continue. And I don't know how anyone deserves any kind of public office or how he can stay there when he allowed this to happen and denied it to the public. His number one role is to keep the public safe.
Yeah.
And that is a fundamental failure. And you know, I feel and I fear that we won't have accountability with Sadiq Khan or Sir Mark Riley. And that's why, you know, my promise is that if I am elected, that will be a number one priority. You know, there will be an elite task force to root out any of those senior police officers that said, look the other way.
Yeah.
Any of those social services, you know, any politician, if it means going after, you know, Sir Mark Riley or Sadiq Khan because they covered it up, then it has to be, because it's the bare minimum we can give to these girls and the abusers, of course.
Hey, if you're enjoying what you're watching and you want to see more, then you can see some exclusive content from me and from the Daily Express. Link in the description below. It's our premium service, and it's only going to cost you £1 for the first month. Well, your reform stablemate Zahir Youssef has said that Starmer's role as PM is untenable after this investigation. You think he's right?
Warning notices were never meant to tackle rape gangs. You know, they were meant to, as I said, like nuisances. And you don't stop grooming gangs with paperwork. You stop it by arresting him and imprisoning him and removing him from the situation and protecting the child that's being abused. And you know what? You do kind of feel after Mandelson, after the other counsellor that they supported who had close connections with a paedophile, do they have a paedophile issue?
Yeah.
You know, and this is another thing that comes to light.
So arguably, Nick Candy, your reform treasurer, should he resign from his position? Named in the Epstein Files dozens of times, had contact with Epstein.
No, he didn't. So going back to that Piers Morgan debate.
Well, we'll come to that later, but
So Nick never met Epstein.
You never met him, but he had email contact with him. But
I think he had email contact with
some of his associates.
With Ghislaine,
With Ghislaine, and he was trying to go and see a home that Epstein owned.
I don't know. Honestly, I don't know.
Well, that's what was released. But
he never. I just want to make it clear, he never. And when I said, people say I alluded to that in the Piers Morgan, I couldn't hear the question because they were all on a screen on Zoom. Piers Morgan sent a camera crew to me in a rally that I was about to do. So I was faced with nothing and just bright lights. And so I couldn't hear well.
Well, let's go back to that.
We'll go back to that.
Because people aren't going to know what you're talking about.
No, that's fine.
People.
But just to clear, Nick Candy never met
Epstein. He never met Epstein.
Never met him.
But he was in contact with his associates and he was trying to perhaps sell one of Epstein's homes. He was interested in looking at one of Epstein's homes. And it was Nick Candy, I think his brother Christian had been in touch with.
I haven't actually seen that.
Fine. But those things are out there. So Epstein was a known paedophile. That's, of course, being named in the files does not mean that Nick Candy did anything wrong at all. But if I found out that you were named in the Epstein files and you've been emailing Epstein...
Well, he didn't email Epstein. He emailed his assistant.
If I found out you've been emailing Epstein's assistant, it's semantics. This is semantics. You email Epstein's assistant, whatever. I would think, I'm probably not going to be mates with Laila Cunningham then. That seems a bit shady to be emailing the assistant of known pedophile or emailing Ghislaine Maxwell.
I think you'll find many business people were named. Listen, I'm not here to defend the Epstein Files in any way. I don't. All I know is that Nick never met him. It was an email exchange. Piers Morgan actually met Ghislaine. Yeah, I'm not saying. I think you'll find lots of people named, and Reform doesn't condone at all what Epstein did. But I'm not. I'm not here to discuss Nick Candy.
Fine. He is your treasurer, though. So when Reform are in government, and I think Reform will make it into government at the next general election, will you hold your own party at that point to the same standards that we hold Labour to currently? We're calling for Starmer to resign.
But in what aspect?
In the aspect of if something comes out about one of your MPs, and it could be anything, it doesn't have to be just linked to Epstein, it could be one of your MPs was convicted for beating up his girlfriend. Would Reform come out and say, we didn't know that at the time, now it's time to kick this person out?
Well, look, of course accountability is absolutely necessary, and of course we'll be accountable. That is what people expect from their government. They don't expect a leader to go up there and just say sorry. Mm-hmm. I actually was expecting Starmer to resign once it got found out that he knew that Mandelson... He didn't just send emails. He was his best pal. He stayed, we're talking about a totally different situation here. Mm-hmm. And he didn't. And so of course, we're all about accountability. And I think that's why we want to be in government, so we can bring accountability to government. Mm-hmm. Sorry doesn't cut it. If I was head of HR and I hired Mandelson as the top man, mm-hmm. I wouldn't just go to the boss and be like, I'm sorry, I got it wrong. I would be out of a job.
Yeah.
Because it's a fundamental judgment issue.
Mm-hmm. True. All right, now let's go to Piers Morgan. So I'll explain it to the viewers and listeners. You went on Piers Morgan's show, his YouTube show, with, I think, 5 or 6 of the panelists. You were debating different topics, and then the clip that Piers Morgan seemed to have put out is, like a minute's worth of the interview, and it shows you storming off the show. So what happened? Explain to me what happened.
Yeah, so they were, they were very keen for me to be on this debate, mm-hmm. and so I said, listen, we had a Reform rally in Romford on Monday that day.
Okay.
So I said I can't be on it that time. So they said we'll send a film crew to the rally to film your section. So I'm like, okay.
And what was the debate supposed to be about?
Immigration.
Okay.
It was literally labelled to me as immigration. And they sent a film crew. I was in a dark room. I didn't have a screen in front of me, so I shouldn't see. And then I had an earpiece, and I couldn't hear half of what was being said. Mm-hmm. And the debate started half an hour late.
Okay.
And they told me the debate would last half an hour. I said, I've got to leave at 10 to 6. Mm-hmm. And if you actually watch the full debate, I kept saying I have to go. Mm-hmm. And they knew I had to go. And that is why I left. Literally, I think I left at like 7 minutes to 6, way beyond how long I was meant to stay.
Yeah.
Because I found it so outrageous what that Loki was saying. The fact that grooming gangs are not a criminal category, and that, what else did he say? He said that they are just something to propagate Islamophobia. I couldn't believe my ears. Mm-hmm. I actually have never heard something like that, because I've spoken to some of these victims, and it made me so angry, honestly. I couldn't believe it. But I didn't walk off because of, I couldn't handle the debate in any way. I walked off because I literally had to go. And I kept on saying that.
Okay.
And then there was another guy on there who kept on blaming the grooming gangs on Israel and Epstein. I mean, it was just...
So, yeah, because the interview looked like...
They clipped it in a way.
Yeah.
To make it seem...
was asking you about Epstein and Nick Candy.
Not at all.
And you were then
I've
got to go.
And I couldn't hear what they were saying. Mm-hmm. So I kept on saying, he met him for I couldn't hear. So I kept on repeating what I thought. Uh-huh. And I'm sure Piers Morgan's team will confirm that. I literally couldn't hear half of what was being said.
Do you feel like Piers Morgan lied to you?
I feel like the clip was disingenuous. And I sent them a message saying, you clipped it in a way. You knew I had to leave. And the producer, I've actually got the text message. She says, I'm really sorry. I told them you had to leave. Mm-hmm. And I'm really sorry this came out in that way.
Had you had any warnings prior from other people about, Piers Morgan's style and how he conducts things? Because obviously we're different broadcasters. Here it's a bit more chill. We have a laugh, do a little bit of seriousness, and it's more personal. With Piers, he is very much trying to, I guess, have a scrap between his panelists.
Listen, I didn't mind the scrap. What I minded was the way they clipped it to show that I left in haste because I felt like I couldn't defend my position. Mm-hmm. That's actually what went round, and that's what really bothered me, because it was not at all that. I'm happy to answer any questions, and as I said, scrutinize us as much as you want, because you should.
Yeah.
And that's, but listen, it's politics, and I just ignored it. And actually, people who watched the whole thing realize how incredibly ridiculous the things that were said on there.
Will you go back on there ever again, do you think?
No, because I think they've lost my trust, you know. I don't mind, listen, show the full debate, but to clip it in that way and to release that as the trailer to show that I left early, I think is not great.
When it comes to the London mayoral race,
yeah,
what is it that you offer that's different to Sadiq Khan?
Well, I feel that we have a London now that doesn't work for Londoners. You know, I speak to people where the ULEZ charge prevents them from driving into London. So we have a two-tier London, those that can afford it and those that can't. So I'd want to scrap that. You know, I want a London that's open for everyone. So many people have contacted me from the Met who want to join the campaign, and they are saying, we have 32,000 officers in the Met, and we don't see them. We don't see them on the streets. They're drowning in paperwork. Some of the managerial demands from the upper echelons of the Met don't match what's needed on the ground. You know, he has effectively shut all police stations. He's cut the police from the royal parks. And in a city of 9 million, we have only 2 24-hour counters that are open. It's unsustainable. I was walking around central London on Saturday talking to people, and I didn't see any police officers. You know, in one of the highest crime areas in the country, Oxford Street, and not only pickpocketing, knife crime as well is very high there in Westminster. There's just no police. You got to ask yourself, and listen, say it how it is, police is a deterrent. And what most people told me is we'd love to see more police. One of the women I spoke to said she was followed earlier, and she didn't know where to go. She had to square up to him.
Yeah.
And that's what you're finding, is that Londoners are defending themselves. I had to do it, as you know. And I don't feel, people don't want to do that. They don't want to risk their lives. We pay our taxes and we expect protection in return, and we're not getting that. And JJ, you saw the robbery that happened in Richmond. I'm sure it went viral.
Yeah.
That didn't happen on Tuesday morning when a quiet time. It happened Saturday morning, peak pedestrian, because they're like, you know what? We can get away with it. It's so brazen.
Yeah.
A machete fight on Knightsbridge.
Yeah.
It's just, you know, there has been a power vacuum in London because of the lack of policing.
But where are you going to get the money from to...
Well, we already have 32,000 officers.
Yeah, so
it's redeploying them.
So you think 32,000 is enough?
I think, well, we'll look at the numbers, but right now, where are they, those 32,000?
They're about... I mean, listen, me personally, I've never been a fan of the police, but recently I've had to call up the cops a couple of times, and I've caught pickpockets and things, and they've gotten to move within 10 minutes. They've been pretty good, I think.
That's fine, but the thing is, I don't feel that police should just be there as a reactive force. I feel they should be there as a deterrent, right? And that deterrent factor, I don't want to... So
you'd redeploy them? You'd take them from some areas that are safer and put them in the more dangerous areas?
And I mean, they're drowning in paperwork. You know, he has an elite force for hate crime. I think I'd redeploy them in hotspots. You know, nightclubs where women come out and they don't feel safe. We have a rape that's reported every hour. Only 6% end up in a charge. And a lady contacted me and she said, listen, I was raped and the police are not going to charge it. Can you help me? Because they said I was smiling in the CCTV before I went up to his flat. And I wrote to the police, and I kid you not, I have the email, and the police wrote back and said, yeah, we're not going to charge it because she was smiling and we cannot be sure that a jury will convict. And I said, you cannot act as judge and jury. That's a trial matter, you know, and it does come down to the credibility of the witness and the credibility of the defendant, and that is a trial matter. But what what I cannot believe is some police officers are acting like judge and jury, and I don't know why, but that's why you're seeing such low charge rates. Every metric of crime has gone up under Sadiq Khan, apart from homicide, and that's because it's really hard to ignore a dead body. Obviously, the majority of homicides are investigated, and we have one of the best homicide units, you know, but that's fine when you get 95% of homicides are investigated and other crimes are not. So there is a problem there.
So what would you do about knife crime?
Well, number one, I'd bring back sensibility to knife crime. You know, I actually spoke to police officers today. He said if someone just smells of drugs, I cannot stop them. You know, if you're wearing a balaclava, you should be stopped. I think you need to go back to sensible stop and search.
Would you ban balaclavas from London?
Yeah, I would. Well, I mean, it's difficult to ban something, right? You'd have to put in legislation.
Yeah.
But I would make it a reason for stop and search. 100%.
Same goes for burqas and that kind of thing.
Yeah, because think of it logically. If you only ban balaclavas, but then they've lost their cloak of anonymity, what prevents them from wearing a burqa? And also, listen, a burqa's got nothing to do with religion. It is, in my opinion, and in many other Muslims, it's a form of oppression. It's a form of oppression of women, and it's a direct result of very radical cultural norms that don't match British norms.
What about low traffic
also,
neighbourhoods?
I've actually spoken to shops in like Knightsbridge, and they said people, who knows if they're women, come in burqas and do steal. You know, you should not hide your identity in an open society.
Yeah, I agree. Low traffic neighbourhoods. It's very localised to London, but everyone hates them.
Of my life.
Yeah.
You can't imagine how many emails I get about this. I don't want to punish drivers.
Yeah.
You know, right now you feel there's a massive assault. I think the car's one of the best inventions. It's great. You know, I can get in my car, I can get there, I can bundle my kids in it.
Yeah.
You know, if I've been for a run and my back hurts, and the fact that we're punishing drivers, very few residents want LTNs.
Oh yeah, I know loads of residents, loads of areas where they've lobbied against local council and won and had them removed.
In fact, it's one of the it's one of the biggest like grassroots movements, the anti-LTN movement in modern times. You know, in London.
Yeah.
And that's what I mean when I say London right now is a London that doesn't work for Londoners. It works for this political class that's run by ideology.
Yeah.
You know, if your residents do not want LTNs, then they elected you. Who the hell do you think you are going against what they want?
Yeah.
And that's why I'm running. And that's why, you know, I'm running on a manifesto that I will speak to Londoners for the next 2 years, going around all the boroughs speaking to people, because I genuinely just do want to give London back to Londoners. But yeah, LTNs have got to go.
Yeah.
You know, it is a massive assault on drivers.
Okay. Well, Laila, thank you for coming in.
Thank you.
I'll see you on the basketball court.
Yeah, well.
if my hips can take it.
If you can catch me.
Yeah. Well, thank you for watching. Leave your comments below. Like, share and subscribe and hit that hype button. Thank you. Bye-bye.